Morena everyone, happy International Women's Day. Thank you Helen, I've got the privilege of taking over the panel now and we've got an absolutely stellar lineup joining Naomi on the stage. So we have, can I welcome up our panel members please? We have Kresh Wright, who is the Head of Life and Health New Zealand at Swiss Re. Kresh delivers reinsurance solutions to Swiss Re clients across New Zealand and is passionate about finding ways to deliver insurance solutions to underserved and vulnerable communities in a sustainable way. Can I welcome up Stephanie, you're next, Stephanie Powell. Stephanie is the founder of Crayon. She founded Capital W, the first undergraduate business club for women in Australia. She was the #1 hybrid stockbroker at UBS at the age of 25. She has an MBA from Wharton, an MPA from Harvard, came to New Zealand, found love, started work at Vend and had a child. And I'm not sure if that's at work or... But having a child then asked her to... she asked herself some questions about, is everyone else as unprepared as I am financially when we have a child? So that unique insight, I guess, led her to her new business, Crayon, which I look forward to hearing a little bit more about this morning. And Stephanie's doing some great work around allowing new parents to navigate financial puzzles they face so they can be the best parent that they can be. And I'd also like to welcome up Nina Santos. All right. Or Harry Styles. Nina is a campaigner, a law graduate, a writer, and a staunch spokesperson for intersectional gender equity and rights of women, migrants, and ethnic communities. But first, we'd like to touch on, I guess, celebrating success, because that's what today's about. It's about celebrating success. And I thought what we might do is just start from Kresh and work our way this way. You've all got 30 seconds maximum, because we're on the clock. I might cut you off, so if you don't get your points across, goodness knows what you're successful for. And feel free also to jump in, please, if you want to add something to a question if it's not addressed to you. But firstly, what's the single thing you're most proud of in your career to date, Kresh?
Thanks, Anna. So the single thing that I'm most proud of is actually probably a period of my life, not a single moment. And that's been the last 2.5 years since I was appointed to this role as Head of Life and Health for New Zealand. Now, 2 reasons for that. The first is really that New Zealand is very special to me. So despite living in Sydney, I am a Kiwi, and New Zealand is very special to me. So I'm really proud that I have the responsibility for our business here in New Zealand, and that I get to work with our insurance partners to protect New Zealanders. The second reason is, I'm working hard for this 30 seconds here, but the second reason is really my family. And, you know, looking back over, as far as I remember really, both my parents really encouraged myself, and I have 2 sisters as well. They always encouraged us. They always told us, you know, you can do whatever you want to do, you can be whatever you want to be, reach for the stars. And they, you know, we had enough in life. They worked really hard for it, but they prioritised us and our education and our dreams above everything else. So I'm proud that hopefully I've made them proud as well.
Just, I might twist your one slightly, Naomi, because we've got your answer already, but I'd like to ask you, what do you believe that your family would say is your proudest moment?
Yeah, well, I think they're both the same thing, actually, because I've worked all of my son's life, and he's 32 and he thinks his mum rocks. And all the way through that life, people have said to me, how can you do what you're doing to your son? And I go, da-da, I win.
Nice one. Thank you. Stephanie.
So for me, it would be starting Capital W. I did it in my second year of university, and what I'm most proud of is I built something other people believe in. So each successive team made it bigger and stronger and better. 15 years on, it's still standing and better than ever. and it's something that benefits future generations. I don't actually have anything to do with it anymore, and I haven't for over a decade, and that's something I'm really proud of.
Awesome. That was a lovely story you told us about that the other day. Nina.
Kia ora, everyone. Just acknowledging my friends, my sisters, and my partner as well. Thanks for having me. My proudest moment in my career would be 8 hours ago. I was screaming at Harry Styles' concert, singing along to all of his songs, and now I'm here. I made it, and I've become the most multifaceted woman that I've always aspired to be. So every time I see an article saying, "Can women really have it all?" We can. The real answer is it'd be in the face of sexism and racism. And there are a lot of monsters out there. I'm really proud of the fact that we've managed to deliver Mind the Gap as a really kind of breakthrough campaign that has been fighting, for more than a year now for pay transparency. And it hasn't been easy, but like Naomi said, we just got to keep going. Persistence is what will get you through.
Awesome. Thank you, Nina. Naomi, I'm going to address this one to you. Obviously, you've been in the insurance industry. I don't think you said you were there for 60 years, but for a long time. What, I guess, progress have you seen and what still needs to change? What's the one thing that needs to change?
I think the progress is, look around the room, is the diversity that we have in the industry. And that's not just genders, it's ages and it's ethnicities and it's sexual orientation, and it's normal. This is normal now in the industry. So, man, have we come a long way. And you accelerate that because the more difference you bring in, the better ideas you have. And the faster you move and the better the outcome is for everybody. So that's, one of the things that I've seen change the most. We have to do more. And the pay equity thing is an interesting one. And that's not just about gender. It's about difference, right? Mm-hmm. And I know there's a question on that later, but and I've got an answer for potentially how you deal with that. But that truly still is the thing that locks people into a box, and there shouldn't be any boxes.
Good, thank you. And I'm kind of reflecting back, I don't know, I'm not quite as long as in the industry as Naomi, but 10 or 15 years ago, I don't think we would have even had a breakfast for International Women's Day. So big clap out to everyone who turned up this morning. You clap, please. And particularly those that went to Harry Styles, then came home and did their census. Kresh, what work have your organisations been doing to enhance gender equity?
So I guess first of all I'd say at Swiss Re, creating a diverse, inclusive, equitable workplace is really important to us, and we believe really crucial to the success of our organisation. So there are a few different things that we are doing. First of all, it's about broadening the percentage of women that are entering our organisation, and not just at senior leadership levels, but across the board. And what that means really is that we need to ensure that we have diverse candidate panels. We need to ensure we've got diverse selection panels as well, and of course that there's no bias creeping into our recruitment processes. So what at a board of directors level, we also have commitments in terms of the number of women that we are targeting to have at that level, and that target is at least 30%. The next level down, we've got commitments around senior management and the percentage of women at that level. So at our group executive committee, we're targeting, again, 30%, at least 30% by 2025. And the layer below that, and senior management, we're targeting at least 40%. So, and those targets really are monitored and managed by, again, our group executive committee, and what they're also doing is just ensuring that there's enough support for our people to thrive at different levels. I could keep going.
I know, because there's so much to say and there's some amazing stuff going on at Swiss Re, but I just wanted to stop you at that point to build on that with both Stephanie and Nina. Obviously, you've seen a growing trend in the number of organisations reporting, and particularly around the parental leave policies and pay gaps across both of your spaces. So I'd love to hear a little bit about the increasing trends you're seeing in the parental leave space and then the pay gap space, please.
Sure. So we're building the New Zealand Parental Leave Register. It will be the most comprehensive database of verified employer parental leave policies. So, and we're launching it at the end of the month, and we're working constructively with employers to get this information. I think it's very important because a lot of us don't want it to ask in a job interview or even with your current manager that perhaps you're thinking about having a family. I think the motherhood bias is very real still. And we know, at least from surveys, that at least 60% of prospective candidates wouldn't ask in the process. So they have to rely on Google, friends, back channel, and they may not get that information at all. And so we've been working with companies. We have collected 150 policies. And within the financial services industry, and I think this is true of probably all of them, is that you do see a lot of the publicly listed entities. They're probably more willing to come on board. They're used to having to disclose more information. And then you know, once you get some on board, it opens up the conversation with others. I think, Nina, you'll find this too, right? But employers will often look at what their peers are doing as a way. But honestly, we've been pleasantly surprised by how constructive employers have been. I think for them it's not necessarily that they don't want to put the information out there, but they want to make sure we're going to be a safe pair of hands for that information. And we've been very clear that our goal is transparency, not ranking or rating employers. And that flows through the communication around the registry, flows through the design of how we do it, how the information is displayed. One of the first questions I often get asked is, why are you doing this? I think a lot of people want to understand the motivation because that drives so much of the decisions in how all the information is shared. So it's been exciting, and I think as we get it live and people see that this is a real thing, that they're going to be okay being on here, that we'll hopefully see more come through as well.
Fabulous, thank you. And can we jump onto the pay reporting too, because it's such an important measure?
So a year ago today, exactly, on International Women's Day, Mindthegap launched the New Zealand's first public pay gap registry. So at that time, only 3 businesses in New Zealand were publicly reporting their gender pay gap. Fast forward to now, we're at 90, and we need to reach 100 in the next 2 weeks. So if you're businesses that hasn't reported yet, please go back to your office and get on with it. And the purpose, simple words. The purpose of the registry was really to signal to government that, hey, this is something a lot of businesses want. The downside of it all was this time last year, it had to be a big sales pitch. Disclosing pay gaps is not something a lot of businesses wanted to do. In fact, it's still the case for a lot of businesses because in many instances, the gap is way bigger than the national 9.2 standard. 9.2 is just for gender. For Pacific Women, it's about 25%, which is about 75 cents for every white man's dollar, which is a huge difference, right? Which points to intersectionality. So we've really seen the changing tide in that now, when we speak to businesses, it's an easier sales pitch because we have these 90 household names, Air New Zealand, Fonterra, Westpac, PwC, who have taken on the initiative and say, even though it's not mandated by the government yet, we're going to do it because it's the right thing to do. And what reporting does is it lifts the burden off women, especially off women in color, who we know in corporate spaces and workplaces don't have that bargaining power to actually ask. So it's a very important part of good business practice.
Awesome, thank you. And Naomi, obviously over the 60 years in the insurance, and I can stretch this now, can't I? In the insurance industry, you've been on both sides of the table around both parental leave and pay gender gap focus. Be good to hear some insights, how that's changed over time.
Yeah, well, there was no parental leave when I had my son. So, but actually, instead of doing that, I'm going to give you an example of how to fix this, right? A very quick example of how to fix this. I recently recruited a very senior woman into our organisation. Fabulous candidate. She was paid less than all of the men that applied for the job. So we paid her what we would have needed to pay the person who was paid the most out of that group of people, which was a massive pay jump for her. And the reason we did that is because for her whole career, people looked at what she was paid and added a bit, which ends up being, just continues to get less and less, right? Because the percentage on a lower dollar value is a smaller dollar value, you end up there. So that's one way of fixing it. It's a big call to pay more than you need to get someone. She won't leave, and we have a process now for what we do for people going forward. So that's a big call, but that's how you fix it, right? You just stop paying women less.
Would you have done that 10 years ago?
No, I wouldn't have.
No.
No.
Right.
So all of the conversation around that, no, and it never happened to me either. And so boards need to change too, because it's also a problem at the CEO level and it filters down. Right?
Someone's just asked a great question, actually just building on that, and anyone can jump in and answer this. So with the gender pay gap reporting and making those decisions about how much you're paying people as they come into roles, how do you account for women exiting the workforce to have children and women working more part-time roles to support families?
Yeah, so we certainly hear a lot of anecdotal information about how hard it is to come back into the workplace and all the skills that don't get valued. I think, I always joke I had a kid, not a lobotomy. I'm still just as valuable and probably more valuable after having my children. I've got 2, they're 4 and 1.5. And I think we need to change the conversation of having children as being a net negative. It's not. One of the sales leaders I used to work with, his top performers were actually single mothers. And his view was they came in, they were efficient. They weren't here to muck around. They were here to get their job done, to earn good money, because they supported their family, and they got out. And they were his favourite types of hires. And I think we need to start seeing the positives and the skills and the knowledge that you get from becoming a parent and how that adds to your role in the workplace, as opposed to saying, oh, that's a mum who's going to have more sick days and this and part-time and, can't contribute. I can't tell you how many friends I have who are in part-time roles and feel stuck. They feel like, I'm never going to get promoted in this part-time role. And I think we just need to change, which is easier said than done, but we need to start reframing, well, what is it additive around becoming a parent as opposed to detracting from your value as an employee?
Nina, do you want to jump in at all on any insights you're seeing?
What I can say is that there's a lot of misconception around the difference between pay gaps, equal pay, pay equity. And when we talk about pay gaps, it's not just about paying men and women the same for the exact same roles. That's equal pay. It will take more than a generation, hopefully not, to actually close the gaps, because like you said, it involves, it's not just an equal pay, it's not having enough women in leadership positions, it's having more women in part-time positions, not paying women for domestic roles. So what I can say is that it needs to be an absolutely holistic approach. And like Steph said, it all comes down to how we value women, how we devalue women, because the pay gap will persist until we sort that out.
COVID has helped because workplace flexibility has never been better than it is now, although I'm struggling to see some of the companies wanting to reverse that and say everyone should come back to the office because we can't manage culture. Sorry, culture is people being happy, able to work around their kids' days off school, and know that they don't have to be the one that takes the day off because somebody's got a sniffle, that if they want to, they can continue to work. So that parental, mothers look after the kids, it was always the mother that went to pick them up when the school said you can't have them here, they've got a cold. It was always the school holiday juggle, that kind of thing. It is still not easy, but it is much easier if you continue, you go workplace flexibility helps mothers. And so don't reverse it. There's my tip.
And Anna, if I could jump in as well, I guess I agree COVID has helped. I think COVID has also not helped women because, studies have shown over the period of COVID that women are more likely to suffer from mental health issues over this time as well. Plus they are doing more of this unpaid work during the time, so actually financially women are potentially suffering more, and we might even be reversing some of the good work that we've done in recent years, and of course the current economic situation doesn't help things either.
Kresh, actually just building a little bit on some of the work Swiss Re's done and some of the research you've done on women in the reinsurance industry. Can you share, I guess, what the key findings were of that research and any trends you're seeing?
Yeah, sure. So probably 2 years ago now, so it does need some updating, but it's definitely worth highlighting a couple of the key findings from our research. So we surveyed 400 insurance companies and 29 reinsurance companies in 12 of the largest global insurance markets, and this is across both life and the non-life markets. I guess overall we found that there is some progress being made in terms of increasing the representation of women in the insurance industry, but that progress has been really slow. So the two key findings, I guess I would call out, firstly, that the percentage of women in senior leadership roles and at the board level as well is still fairly low. So across the board, at a global level, at the CEO level, I think the average was around 10%. At board level, it was lower than that, around the 6% mark. At senior management, senior exec level, it was 23%. I did also look up the numbers for Australia and New Zealand. New Zealand has actually got numbers that are higher than the global averages, so that's positive. But what I would say is that because the number of women in these leadership roles is so few, that just one woman in a role can swing the numbers quite quickly. So the other key finding that I'll just mention as well is that we looked at the relationship between the proportion of women at senior roles in a company versus the performance of that company in terms of their return on equity. And what we found is that when you move from a low proportion of women, which we kind of put at the 0% of women at senior management level versus a high proportion of women at senior management level, which we cut off at around 25%, that the ROE of that particular insurer rose by 3 to 4 percentage points. So there's some really strong evidence that having that diversity at a senior level delivers those benefits in terms of performance.
Fabulous. So, to Naomi's point before, how do we bring more women into the industry to continue to improve the performance? Nina, I've got a question from the audience here for you. How big does an organisation need to be to report their pay gaps?
The official requirement to join the registry is you have to have 50 or more staff. And the reason for that is that if you're a bit smaller, you risk disclosing everyone's salaries, and I don't see a problem with that, but okay. But there are smaller businesses with less than 10 staff who have started reporting, so which is really cool.
So I think probably 2 you need, don't you?
Yeah, yeah.
And one on parental leave policies, and this is a really, really good one that I'm quite interested in the answer. I mean, isn't good parental leave policy a great recruitment tool?
Absolutely. But in New Zealand, 90% of employers only offer the statutory entitlements. So although you see it in the news that so-and-so's launches policy, the majority of employers here go with what the government has. So it is completely a great recruitment tool to get people to want to join you, but also to stay. I think financially stressed employees, that's not just bad for them, it's actually bad for the employer. There's research that shows that workers who are financially stressed are more likely to have sick days, are less productive, and more likely to leave your organisation. So in New Zealand, 70% of women or mothers go back to work before they want to from parental leave because they can't afford to stay at home. Fathers, on average, they want to take 3 months. They're lucky if they get 1 to 2 weeks. When you look at New Zealand compared to the rest of the world, when it comes to paid primary care leave, we're in the bottom quartile amongst developed countries. For paid partner leave, we're dead last amongst developed countries. And when it comes to childcare, we're the 4th most expensive country in the world. So it's expensive to have kids anywhere, but it's really expensive to raise them here. So the more that companies or employers can help their employees navigate that huge life change, the more likely that employee is going to stay with you.
I certainly know they're expensive to raise, having 3 growing teenagers. Naomi and Kresh, just I think building on that parental leave as a recruitment tool, How often in your careers have you seen someone come into an interview for a job and ask, what is your parental leave policy and how do we encourage those conversations?
I don't have any formal answer to that, but I think it's quite a lot given how many children we produce at Partners. we think we have a generous parental leave policy, and my staff over there can tell you that that we seem to be a baby-making factory. And I know because I send out the email saying congratulations to this baby, and I have to remember to change the names every time, otherwise there seems to be a lot, which is fabulous, absolutely fabulous, and they stay with us, and those children grow up and come and work for us, so it's all good.
I think we've got a separate session on slave labour.
Yeah, so we hire a lot of young people because we don't insist that you have to have experience in the industry for X number of years before you come on board. So we have a lot of young people. That's important to those young people, and they clearly feel comfortable having their families while they work for Partners Life, which is a big tick.
Yeah, again, no formal answer, but I'd say what we have noticed is, as you said earlier, Naomi, that the younger people coming into our industry at the moment are a lot more confident, and they will ask, and those things are super important to them. So I think again, if we want to attract those young people and then push them up through our companies and progress their careers, we have to offer decent policies that are fair for everyone.
Great, thank you. Just touching on the global differences, so New Zealand's leading in some spaces. Australia recently made some changes to mandatory reporting. Do you want to touch on that, Nina, and what that means for your staunch campaigning?
So interestingly, what I've noticed with New Zealand is that we take super immense pride in being a world leader in terms of gender equality. We got women to vote. We really did that. But actually, we're not doing too well. There's so much work to be done. For example, last week, Australia finally legislated mandatory pay gap reporting for businesses with more than 100 staff. And this is just normal to the rest of the world, right? UK, Canada, France, they're all doing it. We're behind the ball game, and what we're advocating for is actually the bare minimum, which is disappointing. So, like I said, there's been a change in tide over the last year with what businesses are starting to welcome and normalize. Businesses don't get cancelled for reporting their big pay gaps. They actually get applauded for, starting to make a difference in addressing it. But yeah, New Zealand needs to catch up, and I will emphasize that to the minister.
So do you think, like Pavlova, we might copy them?
Oh, actually, no. We shouldn't just copy them. We can do better because they're only doing gender. We should be doing ethnic, Maori, Pacifica, Asian, and other ethnicities.
Right. There was a question actually that came through around sort of touching on that, and again, open it up to anyone. What are your views on people migrating to New Zealand and being declined jobs on the grounds of not having New Zealand experience?
Me.
Anyone who'd like to answer it?
Yeah, well, this is the thing that I was talking about. So recruitment is a huge part of the problem because recruitment agents are told we need someone with this much experience in this job. Well, then you're going to get the same people all of the time, right? Because you say I have to have 10 years experience at this, right? 10 years New Zealand experience, for example. And that is a deliberate cut people out. You have to tell your recruitment companies that's not a criteria. In fact, it's an opposite of a criteria. We want difference, not the same, right? So that's a huge part of it. The experience that you ask for is discriminatory, often, and it will cut out the kinds of brilliance that you could get if you didn't do that. So it applies to immigrants from other countries, it applies to people from other industries, and it applies to people who've been at home bringing up children and are now back into the workforce, that if you do that, you cut all of those people out and you will miss some of the most amazing people.
Equal playing field. Crayon, I have a question for you. How many of the policies for parental leave provide paid parental leave for secondary carer?
Becoming more and more common. So I would say, like I said earlier, 90% of people offer the statutory entitlements across all the, dimensions of parental leave. But for those who do offer something above that, it's much more common now to offer something for partners.
Great.
And I will say, well, there are even a handful of ones out there who will offer what we call a gender-neutral policy. So they'll say, we don't care which one of you is the primary carer or the partner. You're having a child. This is a huge life change, and therefore, you all get the same amount of leave And that's probably at the leading edge, but even most policies now will have something in there paid for partner. Because in New Zealand, the statutory entitlement is 2 weeks unpaid.
Continuing on the partner theme, actually, and we might start from Kresh and work this way. How fairly are your household responsibilities split between your partner and yourself? And I touch on this because I was driving in this morning and one of my colleagues was putting their makeup on, and I said, "Oh, you didn't get time to get ready this morning." She goes, "Had the choice of making sandwiches for my children or doing my makeup."
Well, I think for most of my career I've been in a unique situation where I've been the primary breadwinner and my husband was a stay-at-home dad until our daughter was 9 years old. So there was that over that 9 years, I don't think I cleaned a toilet once. I didn't cook a dinner. So I was, very well supported in progressing in my own career. That's changed over the last 3 years, so I have had to do a bit more, and and I kind of feel it's the scales are tipping the other way now. So I need to do something about that. But I've been very lucky overall.
Yeah, that's interesting. When we were younger, it was 90 me and 10 him. And then when we had our son and I needed to go back because Sovereign was begging me to come back, he was 5 months old and my husband was freaking about being the sole income earner. So we had a very long and deep discussion around that, and he has been fantastic ever since. So we share everything equally. But I will tell you that as soon as I could afford it, I got a cleaner. And I remember my mother going, "How could you spend that money?" And I never thought the cleaner ever did, and I still don't think they do as good a job, but oh my God, it's changed my life. And every time I started a company, I had to can the cleaner because I put all my money into the new business and I had no money. And my measurement of success was when I could finally afford a cleaner again. So, so there's a tip. It's worth it if you could afford it, because man, does it give you some freedom.
I'm taking that tip home with me tonight. Stephanie.
Yeah, I think having a kid kind of breaks all your systems that you had. I don't know if that's what other people's experiences is like. So I've got two very young ones. And I would say it's fluid, like it will go through seasons, and my husband works a 12-hour-a-day job, has to be at his desk type of job, right? So the nature of his work means that because I work for myself, I have much more flexibility. So I would say that I would do more of the unpaid work in our household, and that is a reflection of how jobs are set up.
Be careful because your partner's here, I think.
Oh, he just left. Oh, probably just dodged this question. I'm child-free, so I can't really answer that yet. I'm in my Harry Styles phase.
And no one does the lawns and the dishes?
I do. In my house, because I live with my mum and my brother, and I've always been kind of the primary breadwinner for them as well, so I do take on a lot.
Good, thank you. There's some great questions coming through. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through them. Mentors. I'm really interested in, firstly, male mentor or female mentor, most influential mentor, and what to look for in a mentor. There's a couple of questions coming up around that.
So over my career, I've had both male and female mentors, and I've found that I've gotten different things from both of them. From the one woman mentor that I've had, I guess she's really been an inspiration for me on what I can achieve, and been a role model for me in terms of being strong, and as Naomi said earlier, giving me that confidence to ask for things and to not care about what other people think about me as well. And the male mentor that I have had as well, I think has been awesome, because and working in the financial services industry that has been a male-dominated industry, it's just been good to learn, a few tricks of the trade, etc. And the male mentor I've had has been in no way chauvinistic or anything like that. So it's been I've found really, really helpful. So I think the most important thing is to just find someone that you can really relate to and that you can talk very openly with.
I don't really think I've ever had a mentor in the formal word of it. I've had people I've aspired to be like about certain things. I've had people I've definitely aspired not to be like. And honestly, it is true. You go, well, I'm never doing that, right? That's not right. I'm not going to do that. And it doesn't matter how much success they think they've got from that. I can't be that. So actually it's learning from all of the people that you observe around you, but I have never asked someone to mentor me in that sense. Been asked a lot of times to mentor people, but so for me it's learn by example, good or bad.
And actually just building on that, I imagine you've been asked by a lot of people because you've got a lot of good tips to share from your experiences. Males and females approach you?
Yeah, actually, I spoke at a women's breakfast about a year ago, and it was chartered accountants. I don't know why but anyway, they had this women's breakfast, and half of the room were men, and they were quite upset because they'd never had all these men turn up to the breakfast. But they obviously had heard of me and wanted to hear from me, and most of the people who came up afterwards and asked me questions were the men.
Awesome, great.
Yeah, so I would think about it as having mentor, advisors, and sponsors, and I've found that kind of framework. So kind of see mentor as someone who gives you advice. Maybe they're in your industry, they're probably a bit further along in their career. I see a coach as someone who more asks reflective questions of you, and I've had a professional coach, they're awesome. I feel like everyone should look into that one. And then a sponsor is someone who advocates for you. So that's usually someone within your organisation or industry who kind of talks about you and helps you kind of guide. So they're three very different roles, and in fact they should be filled by three very different people. And so I'd encourage you to think about, okay, and the reason they should be different is because, with your, say your mentor, you want to be, to Kresh's point, very open about perhaps some things that you're struggling with, but your sponsor who needs to advocate for you, perhaps you don't want them to know everything, so it's helpful to have that division of those people in your lives.
I'm actually going to jump in with another question for you because there's lots of questions around the 9.2% pay gap. And particularly, I'm losing them here now though, does the firstly, where does it come from? And secondly, does the 9.2% pay gap take into account women in part-time work?
Yes, so the 9.2 is the national pay gap, which takes into account all these factors. So unpaid parental leave, women in part-time work, not paying women the same for the same roles as men, so all that fun stuff. What was the other question, sorry, Anna?
So where does how's it calculated, and does it account
Okay,
for
here's
part-time and full-time?
here's the kicker, right? And what we're trying to campaign for, there's no single methodology for how to calculate pay gaps. The public sector are doing it. I think they're doing median instead of average, but for businesses, there's no standard methodology, which is why we've been campaigning for a year and a half. There are preferred tools, so median. Some businesses use average to make them look better, but at the moment, businesses are kind of just free falling, which is not recommended. But we've gotten a group of business leaders together, hopefully work with unions and government and Business New Zealand to actually
Fabulous, to
get
drive
that
some
together.
consistency so we can actually compare.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
And sorry if I could just add one comment. I think you do need to watch out for how it's calculated, because some measures don't include things like bonuses, where, a lot of men in senior roles receive some pretty huge bonuses that can blow that out quite markedly. And I'm pretty sure the one that's calculated by Stats New Zealand doesn't include bonuses.
Okay, so ignore all of the statistics that you see
Yeah.
until Nina's sorted them.
It's actually much worse than 9. I don't believe 9.2. That's why I never use 9.2.
Thanks. We're going to look forward very quickly because our screen's going red. But I think we've touched on very, very briefly and something for all of us to take home. What do we think the financial services industry can do to improve financial outcomes for women? So we'll start down that end.
Yeah, sure. I guess just focusing on one thing, I would say we just need to continue to raise awareness around it. And I think, Riss, you've done an awesome job for the FSC raising the awareness around financial confidence and well-being for women through the It Starts With Action campaign. So I really hope that we'll see more of that this year through the FSC. And I think, for us in our individual organisations as well, just raising the awareness letting our women know that, you know, some of these historical norms don't apply anymore, and if you want something, go out and get it, ask for it, seek it out.
Yeah, from my point of view, it is get women to talk about money, right? We don't talk about money. We're the ones that go, oh, don't put my pay. And people might find out what I get paid. That's embarrassing. You know, we don't talk about money with our kids. We don't talk, so talk about money. Ask for money. Yeah, because when you're talking about it, you're confident talking about money, then you're not shy of asking for money. You're not scared to say, this is what I'm worth. Yeah, you know what you're worth because you've talked to other people and found out. You know what you're worth. So stick up for yourself. Talk about money. Talk to your daughters about money and your sons about money. Make sure they're financially literate, and you might get more financially literate in the process of doing that. Don't stick them where we are. Talk about money.
Yeah, I like that talking point. And as women, we're very good at talking. So, you know, to broaden our topics, certainly will drive the change. Stephanie.
So I would agree with Naomi, and particularly, I mean, I have a parental leave lens on at the moment. But making those conversations more normalised in your workplace, about having those conversations, not just about parental leave, but starting a family and the impact on your career and the moves. You know, I think a lot of people potentially shy away from sharing or flagging that it's something they want to think about. But really, when you're considering your next opportunity, it's something that's at the back of your mind, whether that's within the organisation that you're currently at or moving organisations. So, for example, in New Zealand, you need to be at the same employer for 12 months or more to be eligible for the full set of entitlements from the government. I think a lot of people don't know that. I didn't know that before I had my first kid. And so the more we could talk about and raise awareness, the better people are able to plan, and the more successful they'll be at your organisation as well.
As the official money sector, my message to the sector is lead. So make sure your company is on the parental leave registry. Make sure your company is on the pay gap registry. And I agree with Naomi. It's extremely hard for some women to talk about money, especially women of color. Migrants, for example, as a first-generation migrant, it can be hard to talk about it because you're rocking the boat, and that can sabotage your visa, your working conditions. So as someone with privilege, you have to advocate for those who can. The women that actually need our help are not at the Hordes at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday, Wednesday morning. So if you do have the privilege, senior leaders, you're in a position of power, do something about it, please.
Yeah, and I love that story, Naomi, that you told about actually getting the right outcome for a female that applied for a job and putting them up to that pay level. A question's just come through actually around how do you create confidence negotiating pay with your employer or when you're applying for a new job, because it's not easy. And a lot of people will be sitting in this room going, oh, that's awesome that as an employer you've done that, but not all employers do that. So how do we create confidence among each one of us to be able to ask for that?
Yeah, well, I think it starts with the recruitment process when they ask you how much you're earning. You tell them it's not about how much I'm earning, it's how much I want to earn. Right? Because what they will do is pin you to what you're earning now. Right? So you give it to them. Right? So be confident to say, that's not the right question to ask me. Yeah, the right question to ask me is how much do I want to get paid to do this job?
Thanks. Hopefully that's answered that question, and watch out, bosses, tomorrow. We're going to wrap up with, actually just before we wrap up, I'm just very keen, it's election year obviously. Each of us, you know, we've heard from the Honourable Jan Tanetti. Each of us have got a hotline through to Parliament. What is the one thing that you're going to ask for the incoming Prime Minister to change? Kresh.
For me, quite simply, the legislated pay gap transparency.
To talk about financial literacy, to actually talk about it over and over and over and over again so it becomes normalised that we are not financially literate and we need to be.
Thank you.
To value unpaid work. So, you know, if you're a full-time parent, there's no KiwiSaver for you. There's no parental leave for you if you have another kid. You know, here in this country, we just don't value unpaid work enough.
I love it.
Livable incomes for all, and of course, mandatory pay gap reporting.
Do you guys want to join Parliament?
No.
We've got that you're stopping. But I really was aiming at these three. Right, and I see Richard's getting itchy feet there. So one action, one message for people in this room, and then we're going to wrap it up. So, Kresh?
Yeah, one action, and coming from, I guess, the corporate world of insurance, I think the one action that we can take is to incorporate some of these goals into our performance evaluations, because I think, that's the best way to make change happen and to get people motivated to make that change happen.
For me, it's to go away and tell yourself it's okay to be different. It's okay to be you. That's worth something.
Ask your employer to join the parental leave register. I was looking at the table plan, about half are on board already, so that's exciting, right? There's more to go.
Good stuff, thank you.
Report your pay gaps. And a message to non-women. The women in your life are tired. Stop glorifying them for being resilient. Let's just not praise women for being resilient. Let's change our systems and workplaces so they don't have to be.
Nina for Prime Minister, I say. I'd love to thank all of you for joining our panel this morning.